Hey everyone, welcome back to Two Spot Monkeys Live. Happy to have you join us for episode 17, whether you're joining us via podcast or you're watching on YouTube. And if you are not watching on YouTube, I encourage you to go back and check it out, at least for the first 30 seconds, because, hi Jim, you look interesting. And
Hi,
I see,
Tom.
and I know why you do. Why?
I do. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, tell everyone why you look interesting. As I cover my eyes.
I was gonna try to share audio too and play a little theme song for you, but it was giving me trouble earlier, so I decided against that. But I have my Chicago Bears bear head on my head because the Bears are 1-0 and in first place in the NFC North, and I don't know how long that's going to last, so I'm going to claim it. I'm also going to take this thing off because it's not really that comfortable. Got these little knob things in it that push on my head, but anyways, yeah, my Bears beat your Lions on Sunday. Terrible drop pass at the end of the game for the Lions. Lions, in all likelihood, should have won that game. Of course, it comes down to don't blow a 10-point or more than a 10-point lead with 3 minutes to go in the game. So don't put yourself in a position where DeAndre Swift has to catch that ball. But nonetheless, I just had to poke a little fun and have some fun.
It's fair. It's fair. I deserve it after last week. So
we're not a football podcast, but we got to have a little fun every once in a while. And since the Bears beat the Lions, I thought I'd have a little fun at Tom's expense here today here while we record. But we are here to talk pro wrestling as always. Other things randomly find their way into the show as well. I laugh because one of the podcasts that I listen to every week is the Fully Posable Wrestling Figure podcast. And if you don't listen to it and you like wrestling figures like Tom and I do, I strongly encourage it. But they joke about the fact that, they don't just talk about wrestling figures. Now they've also branched out a little bit into like G.I. Joe and some other toy lines, but they talk about those briefly. They don't spend as much time. But there's always different things that come randomly flying in as you're talking about the topics at hand. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly how our podcast works too. So we have a schedule and a topic or topics, and then who knows the tangents we might fly off on at some point. But today we've got 4 main topics we want to cover. So let's jump in first. We talked I think the end of last week's show about the New Japan G1 Climax 30 coming up. It starts this Saturday. And at that point, we had the participants announced, but we did not have the schedule of matches fully announced yet. Those have since been announced. And Tom and I are actually in a group that is doing a pick'em for this. We've got, looks like it'll be 10 people who have submitted all 93 picks, 90 one-on-one matches, and then the Block A and Block B winners and the overall winner. Easily the largest pick'em I think I have ever taken part in as far as how many picks you got to make. I would say the NCAA tournament would be the next closest thing. But this one, it took a long time to put it together too, for total honesty, because I went and decided to be fancy about it and put pictures and everything in there. But so
it was
Tom,
cool. It was totally cool. I appreciate your efforts.
Thanks. I start on something and then I go, ooh, look, shiny. I can do this too. And but if you're listening to this and it's before Saturday morning, before midnight Friday night, Saturday morning, and you want to get in on this, shoot us an email, twospotmonkeys@gmail.com, and let us know. I can get you the link. It's $10, winner take all. It'll be fun. But so Tom, now the matches have been announced. You and I have both made our picks for that pool. So we're not going to go pick by pick because this would be a 9-hour podcast. But we had some interesting realizations. We kind of had 2 different ways that we approached this. So Tom, why don't you talk about kind of how you approached your picks and things that you saw along the way?
Yeah, for sure. So this week is really going fast for me, just in terms of all of the moving parts of my life. So I wanted to make sure yesterday I spent some time getting this submitted. And I was really optimistic and hopeful I was going to be able to maybe watch some New Japan before, just to kind of get a little bit of up to speed on the product. When I realized that wasn't going to be possible, I went back and looked at some results and tried to get a gist of where things are at. So, like, even though I still want to go watch the Summer Stadium show, which there's a lot of title changes on that show, I just realized. I try to just use that as a launching point to help make picks with, again, like we talked about last week, a lot of guys are coming back. So that's super cool to have some New Japan blood, but fresh blood since they've relaunched in June and July back into the scene. So I actually went match by match and kind of did a tally, for every win, it's plus 2 points all the way down through the end. So either I will have overthought this greatly and be way off the mark, or this strategy will actually prove to be, if my picks are correct in the end, a good exercise. So I'll give my block A, block B winner and my final winner, and then I'll just give a little context for how I got there. So in block A, I have Jay White winning. I have actually a 3-way tie in block A with points, but Jay White wins by like the tiebreaker head to head, and I'll talk about that momentarily. Block B, I have Sonata winning, also a tie there. But again, that the head to head tiebreaker is what gets him in. So, and then Jay White versus Sonata in the final, and Jay White winning that overall. So the 3 in block A that I have, with all of the same points, and hopefully one of these doesn't come back to bite me like it did for the New Japan Cup. Jay White, Kazuchika Okada, and Shingo Takagi. And just to kind of talk about, the why, or the how, I'm pretty sure that I have Jay White beating Okada. I have my document pulled up, so I'm going to actually just verify real quick. I have White beating Takagi. I have White beating Okada. So he will have the head-to-head win over both in the matches there. I don't have Jay White winning everything, of course. And then for Okada, I have him, again, of course, losing to White, but beating Takagi when they square off in October, which is why he slots second there. It does play itself out to the last day of the tournament. So the last day for Block A has Okada versus Will Ospreay, Ishii versus Jay White, and Takagi versus Suzuki. So again, if the picks as I've made them shake out, Jay White losing to Ishii there could have obviously have put someone else ahead of him. So that's that. On block B, it's a little bit more simple for me. And actually, it's funny because I know when we talked last week, we were kind of like block A is like the sexiest block. It's like so many good guys. Man, as I got into doing picks on block B, like I really started to fall more in love with block B without a doubt. So I have Sonata winning that block, as I mentioned, and tied actually points-wise with Kenta, but I have him actually winning the head-to-head match with Kenta to get him in that spot based on the tiebreaker. I have Kenta beating Naito on the last day of the tournament to make that tie happen. And then I have Sonata beating Evil, which is what pushes him over. So again, a little bit of drama there if that is actually how it plays out in the world of New Japan, because on that last day, you do have those 2 matches I just mentioned. So I'm excited. I actually plan to, as best I am able, stay spoiler free on this and watch them all in succession, and finally make use of the last 2-ish months or so where I've paid for the New Japan World subscription and literally not watched a second of it. So that's my strategy. We'll see what happens. Jim, I'd love to hear how you came to your decision on your picks, and also, again, I have inside info, but what strategy did you choose?
I didn't. That was my problem. So my strategy honestly was I just went through the picks. I had thought about doing the tally situation like you did. And I think that's a really strong way to do it because it makes sense. And it helps you just kind of build to where, well, if the matches go the way I think they do, then this is what it means the final is. And then who do you think wins the final? I didn't do that. So I just picked the winners that I thought were going to win each match. I tried to think about things that make sense for maybe future. For instance, I know I had Shingo beating Minoru Suzuki because Suzuki beat him for the never openweight title. I thought Shingo getting a win back, potentially sets up a rematch for them down the road. For that, I had Jay White, who I have winning the G1. So you and I agree on that with Jay White. That would also be good for me in our fantasy wrestling league because I own Jay White. But I had Jay White winning. So I think I had him lose. Well, I know I had him lose to Okada, with the thought that then he has to defend that briefcase against Okada, because usually the winner of the G1 has to defend that briefcase, usually against the people they lost to in the G1 along the way between now and Wrestle Kingdom. So I thought, sets up another White Okada match. Obviously everybody could kind of think, well, could Okada win that briefcase? Because you can never count Okada out for being in the main event at Wrestle Kingdom. I thought I did some of that kind of thing, and I came up with Jay White without doing the tally, Jay White and Evil in the finals. It's a heel final. We talked about, with the New Japan Cup, does it kind of create another problem, from a faction? And I tried to play that out as well, because Evil and Kenta are in the same block, and then you have Jay White as well. So I was trying to play kind of that Bullet Club leadership thing out a little bit. So I have Jay White beating Evil in the finals. After the fact, after I've submitted, and we have it set up in a way, I set it up in a way where you cannot go back in and edit your picks once you've submitted them. I did that intentionally because I don't want to try to police that after the fact, once the tournament starts. So it's just easier to say, you know what, make your picks and you're done.
Write them out.
What's that?
Write them out. Write your picks out.
Right. And if you aren't sure yet, then don't do it just yet. You got until midnight on Friday night. So after the fact, I did go through and do the tally situation and do the 2 points for every win and that sort of thing, and found out that my picks do not lead to Jay White and Evil in the finals. In fact, they don't lead to either Jay White or Evil being in the finals. So that's problematic for the pool. Hopefully I'm just a little bit off on some matches, and you will get me there. Jay White and Evil did finish second with 16 points each, so only losing one match each. I actually, and I did not intend to do this, but I have Kazuchika Okada in the A block and Kenta in the B block, and I have them both running the table, which I did not intend to do, but both going 9-0. That's a problem because I don't see that happening. It's rare. I don't know if it's probably happened in the G1. I'd have to do some research to see. I remember that Shingo did it, the Best of the Super Juniors, a couple of years back. But I don't foresee Okada or Kenta running the table, so I know I'm wrong on a couple of those matches. I do have Jay White and Evil as second, like I said, with 16 points each. And then just going down, Kota Ibushi and Shingo in Block A have 12 points each to tie for third. And my third place in Block B is Sonata. I would probably, I picked Evil to win the block. I would probably have Sonata second, and then Kenta probably third, or maybe Sonata and Kenta tied for second, since that's not a problem to have a tie there. If I really thought of, if we had to pick all 10 in each block, that's probably how I would set them. So it's interesting to see that my picks didn't quite head up the way I thought. I do only have one person never winning a match in the G1 this year, and that's Yujiro Takahashi. I did give one win each to Juice Robinson and Toru Yano, and I actually only have Jeff Cobb winning one match, which again, I don't expect him to be anywhere near the top of the block, but I kind of feel like he's probably going to win more than one match. So I only have him beating Yujiro, and I picked Juice Robinson over him. Like, what am I doing? Somebody, or not, it was a Juice. No, Juice isn't in that block. Taichi, and yeah, I don't know. Taichi's one of the tag champs, though, so I think he's going to do okay in this thing. Anyways, I'm rambling on. Jay White, I think, wins this thing. That was my pick last week. It's still my pick. I think that makes a lot of sense. Jay White and Naito sounds like a good Wrestle Kingdom main event to me. And then I think it sets White up. I think White continues on as the leader of Bullet Club. I think he makes a lot more sense than either Kenta or Evil. Now, do they fall in line and become good soldiers? I don't know. I feel like Kenta, probably not. He might kind of break off on his own. I could see that. But Evil would be awful soon to pull him away from Bullet Club. So we'll see what happens there. I'm excited. I'm with you. I'm going to try to stay spoiler free. I have to remember to stay off Twitter before I see these things, because Twitter is the worst place in the world for wrestling spoilers, mainly because of the number of wrestling accounts that I follow on Twitter. So I have to remember, I usually try to hide that icon. I create a folder on my phone and put that in Facebook in a folder. So I have to like do 2 or 3 clicks to get into them. So I stop myself, go, oh, that's right. There's a reason I'm not doing this. Facebook sometimes is bad, but Twitter is really bad for spoilers. So hopefully Saturday, I'm hoping I'll get a couple hours to be able to watch that. That show Sunday is a little bit of a crapshoot. It might be Monday before I catch Sunday's show. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. You and I both love tournaments. The round robin style of this tournament specifically, I love because our friend Rob made the point that you can't lose your finals guy in the first round, like someone I know did in the New Japan Cup pick'em. Okay, we both lost the finals. You lost your winner, and I lost one of my finals guys in the first round. So that can't happen here. Even if Jay White were to lose on the first day, doesn't mean he can't win the whole darn thing. So we've seen, I think last year, if I remember right, Ibushi won last year. Is that right? Yeah, Kota Ibushi won. And I think his storyline, or it might have been Naito the year before, they lost a lot early and then had to win kind of the rest of their matches to win the thing. So we could see that play out with somebody too, just because, like I said, your winner loses on night one doesn't mean they're gone. So I love this thing. I can't wait. It's going to be some good stuff over the next month. I'm excited to see Ospreay back and Cobb back and Jay White and some of those folks to really round out this New Japan roster. Give them pretty much everybody back in the pool, almost everybody. I think it's going to be fun, Tom.
It will be. And depending on when and how we record next week and the timing of what we've seen or not seen, we'll at least be able to talk a little bit about this. It might not be the most current, but it'll be fun to at least have some initial reflections on, surprises or not surprises or trends or things of that nature. So that'll be cool.
Right. I agree. It'll be fun. And yeah, our hope is as we go through the G1 here, we'll give updates kind of on how we're doing and our picks, and also just kind of thoughts along the way. And like Tom said, we'll try to stay as current as we can, but real life gets in the way sometimes of being able to watch that. And the fact that it's in Japan. And so watching it live is not really an option for either one of us most of the time.
Yeah, I've already been told by my wife, you're not allowed to wake up at 4 a.m. to watch wrestling.
Well, that just seems like a rule that doesn't need to be made, but that's yeah, my wife would probably look at me strangely too if I told her I was getting up at 4 a.m. Although you never know, January 4th could happen. It's Wrestle Kingdom, maybe. I'm not a morning guy though. So, anyways, anything else on the G1, Tom, that you want to hit on?
No, excited. Let's hope we're both right, and let's hope I'm just a tad bit more right than you.
Right, absolutely. No, actually not right. I hope we're both right, but I hope I'm a tad bit more right than you. Let's go Evil. That's maybe I'm going off the fact that he won New Japan Cup, and so that means he'll do well in the G1. But Evil, I think, is going to be an interesting story to watch here because he did win the New Japan Cup, he won the titles, and then lost them pretty much right away, or very quickly. So what do they do with Evil to reestablish him, or where does he fall in the line? I think he's going to be an interesting one to watch here in the tournament. So I hope that I'm right that they rebuild him strong and get him into the finals. So next thing we wanted to look at is over the last week and really the last few months, but especially the last week, there's been a lot of chatter online about does AEW have too much ex-WWE talent? Are they relying too much on guys that WWE didn't want anymore and released, or they left? There's a few of them that asked for their releases and got them. I've got some numbers that we can look at, Tom. I don't know if we want to start with those or just kind of initial thoughts on this.
So it seems like the initial thought, at least I have, and let me know if I'm way off the mark. But Miro, it seems like Miro is the guy that was the straw that broke the camel's back. He comes out as the best man, and then all of a sudden, this is what I'm seeing, this narrative or this this opinion being more buzzworthy than it had been previously. Am I off base on that, or
I think it definitely reignited it. There was a little bit of it with Matt Cardona when he came, I think, but I think it's reignited it that, the feeling among those who are complaining about it, I think, is that each of their big reveals or debuts lately have been ex-WWE guys. On the flip side of that, who else do they want to have debut?
right? That's just it.
Nobody's coming over from Japan right now, so that's not happening. Or it seems that way. Who's out on the indies that isn't in AEW that would make a splash? I know we have friends who are very, very involved in the independent scene and very tuned into who's hot and really good in the ring and deserves a spot to shine. But would that person come in, make everybody go, oh my gosh, we got to watch AEW because AJ Gray, for instance, is a name I know. I haven't seen a lot of AJ Gray, but I know he gets a lot of buzz, because AJ Gray's on AEW. There would be a small sampling of people that'd be like, wow, that's really cool. He's getting this opportunity. I want to watch him. Great. Is the casual wrestling fan going to know AJ Gray? Probably not. Now, should he get a chance? Probably. Absolutely. I don't know. It's, would him being the best man have been better? Wouldn't have gotten the attention. I think Miro coming in is awesome. I think Miro as Rusev was criminally underused in WWE. They built him wonderfully until that match with John Cena, and I'm even okay with Cena winning that match at WrestleMania when Rusev came out on the tank. That was awesome. Back at the 29, I think it was WrestleMania, whichever one was outside. I think in San Francisco, or where Santa Clara. But after that, they kind of he middled around in the mid card, and then he got himself over with Rusev Day, and they still didn't really do anything with it. I mean, it was on every week. It was a featured segment. It was him and Aiden English. You could have really pushed the guy, and he's good in the ring. So I think signing Miro made a ton of sense. Yeah, I don't know who else they want. So let me throw some numbers at you, Tom. Just see what you think. Let me close out my G1 scoring that proves that I don't know what I'm doing there. But so according to AEW's website, I went off their roster and I added one male who was not on their roster listed there because apparently he's not officially signed. And I did on the female side add two females as well. But anyways, on the men's side, there are 62 men who are listed as AEW male wrestlers. 14 of those, I would say, now when I'm saying worked for WWE, I'm talking main card and somewhat pushed at some point or some featured, not just in developmental. They might have been in NXT, that sort of thing. So for instance, Kenny Omega was in WWE developmental at one point. Brian Cage was in WWE developmental at one point. I don't count them as ex-WWE guys. And I don't think anybody would. So I have 14 ex-WWE guys on their roster. I'll just run down them real fast. I won't run down the 48 others because we'll be here forever. But the 14 I have are John Moxley, Brody Lee, Dax Harwood, Cash Wheeler, Chris Jericho, Cody, Dustin Rhodes, Jake Hager, Matt Hardy, Miro, Pac, Sean Spears, Trent Beretta, and Matt Cardona. Cardona is not listed officially on their roster, but I added him because, well, they're picking their spots. I'm wondering if he might be on a pay-per appearance deal because he only seems to appear, once every 3 or 4 weeks. I listed him because he's there. So you got 48 non-WWE, 14 WWE. Now I also went through then and highlighted who's featured because there are a number of folks who are not featured that much that are listed on their website. Angelico and Jack Evans, for instance, or Sonny Kiss, Joey Janela, those kind of guys who are on the non-WWE list. The ones that I would say are featured. Now, I will say I did not include Alex Reynolds, John Silver, Alan Angels as featured. You could argue maybe they are with the Dark Order, but I didn't count them as featured. All 14 of the former WWE guys, I think I would call featured at some level. Sean Spears, I debated, but he's been featured enough that I think I'd count him there. 29 non-WWE guys are featured. So that's about a third ex-WWE guys, 2/3 non-WWE guys. I don't think that's that out of whack, personally.
And when you gave me that first list to begin with, I think that you could make strong cases against some of those names, even though they have a strong WWE history. That they, at the time that AEW started, they shouldn't have been considered like a WWE guy. Like Chris Jericho comes to mind. Like I understand, like it's not hard to make that connection, but prior to the launch of AEW and the knowledge of Chris Jericho's involvement, there was a pretty big separation there. And I think that you could draw a fine enough line to say that his WWE time, for at least now, because who knows what will happen in the future, had sunset. And I think there's a couple of other names on that list too. But it's also easy to say too, it's fair that like guys like Mox and guys like FTR and Brody Lee, who finally were like, look, we're done. We just want to actually get a shot, get a fair opportunity. You're not mad when someone leaves Samsung and goes to work for Apple. Do you think there's a tech podcast where they're like, did you see the raid that Apple made on Samsung? They got all the IT guys. If they do, then obviously I'm way out of my lane. But I just can't imagine that's the case. And then the just like we follow wrestling Twitter, there's like probably tech Twitter, and people are like, can you believe it's a massive undertaking?
I totally agree with you. And Jericho, I pulled up because I was curious as you were saying that. I was like, it has been a while. So his last appearance for WWE was at the Greatest Royal Rumble in April of 2018. He was announced with AEW in January of 2019. Before April of 2018, though, his last match for WWE before that had been on SmackDown. He lost in a three-way match for the U.S. title to AJ Styles, and Kevin Owens was the champion going into that match. Styles won the belt, and that was July of 2017.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, other than that one appearance, and he may have had some appearances where he just did a promo or something, match-wise, hadn't wrestled a match for WWE, a singles triple threat, in 2 years or a year and a half when he was announced for AEW. And then, of course, didn't wrestle for AEW until May at Double or Nothing, their first show. So I agree with that. Cody is another one that I think Cody as used in WWE versus what Cody built himself to between his WWE time and AEW starting through Ring of Honor and Impact and New Japan and everywhere else that he worked. They're totally different characters. Yes, the same man is portraying them, but Cody Rhodes now, or Cody, is a much bigger star. He's a judge on some goofy talent show thing now on TNT. I saw that they promoted. Quick aside. Last week's AEW, all night they promo. We're going to hear from Cody Rhodes. We're going to hear from Cody Rhodes or Cody at the end of this show. They don't say Rhodes. We're going to hear from Cody at the end of this show. We're going to hear from Cody. So
it was called breaking news.
Breaking news. Yes, you're going to hear from Cody, and then it's just him announcing this show with the comedian guy, and a little bit of a bait and switch there. AEW, not good. I'm fine for him promoting the show, but don't play it up like he's going to talk about him coming back, to get Brody Lee or something like that, and then it's just a plug for the game show.
The first time we've heard about him since Brody Lee laid him out,
right?
Is this? That's cringeworthy. Right. Sorry.
I think you just put that promo package in the middle of the show. You don't build to it in any way, shape, or form. You just put it in, and you say, while Cody's out recovering, he's going to take some time also and do this. We wish Cody the best, and we can't wait to see him again. Could have done that just fine. Yeah, the building to that was weak from AEW. But anyways, back to the WWE talent. So let's talk women just for a quick second. Massively the other direction here with women. I only have 4 women on the roster out of the 20 who I would say had some run in WWE, and none of them were main featured people in WWE. I mean, the 4 are Awesome Kong, that's pushing it for her short run there as Karma. Brandy Rhodes, she was a ring announcer in NXT. Ty Conti, very minimally featured in NXT, and with the Mae Young Classic a little bit more. And then Eva Lise, who was on Tough Enough. So really almost none of the women's division. And then 16 non-WWE. And out of the featured, I have one, Brandy, being the only one who has really any tie to WWE, and then 9 who are not WWE. So the women's division, I don't think you can make that argument at all. The one thing I will say about ex-WWE talent is when you're talking the featured, the third and the 2/3 isn't so bad. When you look at the men's titles of the 2 singles titles on the men's side, only ex-WWE guys at some level, again, Jericho and Cody, I think are very good, have some, what do we say, some pushback as to how, they're not straight from WWE into AEW. But no homegrown folks have won those 2 titles yet. Now, I still think MJF will eventually be the one to dethrone Jon Moxley. I don't think Lance Archer is that guy. By the way, I did not put Lance Archer, you might notice, on the WWE roster or the ex-WWE guy, because, well, he was there for a short while. Again, yeah. And that's the thing, too. I think people are grabbing sometimes, they bring in Billy Gunn into that argument. Well, Billy Gunn's listed as a coach on the AEW website. I didn't even put him on the male roster. Yes, he works some dark matches with his son, but come on, it's not like they're featuring Billy Gunn as a main star. If they were, okay, you got something to argue about. I don't think it's that big of a deal. You've got to get eyes. They're running a show on TNT. They're not running, MLW, for instance, doesn't use a lot of ex-WWE talent. They have some, but their show's on BN Sports. Their show's on Fubu Sports Network. They're on YouTube. I like MLW, really like what they're doing. But they're not trying to run a weekly show on TNT, on major cable. You're doing that, you've got to have some name value. So you got to have these WWE guys. It depends on how you present them. I think Brody Lee looks better now than he ever did as Luke Harper. I think Cody definitely is a way bigger star. I don't think anybody can argue that. Matt Cardona, meh. Not sure that's going anywhere. They're not all going to be hits. FTR, there's been a little bit of a pushback. We talked about that, I think, last week. Thought their match last night. I have seen their match from Wednesday night with Jurassic Express. Thought it was good. It was fine. Was what it needed to be for that continued story. And Luchasaurus is a star in the making. I know Jungle Boy is too, but holy smokes, Luchasaurus has got a future. Don't know if he can be world champion with that mask on, though. That might be a problem.
So let me ask a question as we're processing this, and it's a good. I think it's good. I think it's a good topic, and I think it's fair. I think that the numbers that you brought in really help paint a very accurate picture too of the reality. I wonder if the vocal minority, I'm going to call them the vocal minority, are just wanting AEW to be so much of what WWE is not. That because you're seeing guys that are visually associated, you can make a visual connection that's the problem. It's not about presentation. It's not about output in the ring. It's just it's the visual, and maybe that's where people get stuck.
And I think you're right. And I think they also, with that visual presentation, get caught on, if you see, for instance, I'm going to use Cardona as an example here. Oh, that's Zack Ryder. Zack Ryder wasn't really ever pushed as anything in WWE. He, like Rusev Day, got himself over with the whole woo-woo-woo and the internet champion thing, and they didn't do nearly enough with that when they could have. They gave him the cup of coffee with the one-day Intercontinental title reign, which was just kind of, they gave him his WrestleMania moment, then took it right away the next day. Like, don't even give him a shot. See what you got there. I don't know. But you see Ryder come out, and he's, looking like this star on AEW, and you're going, that's Zack Ryder. He's not really, that great. I think it can happen with Brody Lee. Cody looks enough different that I think that helps there. He's not coming out of Stardust, which is what the last WWE people had seen him as. So I think there's some of that, but I think those people also give it a check, give it a shot, see how AEW is presenting them, see how they're doing in the ring, how do they do as a character, all of that. Luke Harper got very little promo time in WWE. Brody Lee's getting lots of promo time in AEW. Is he any good on the mic? I think he's all right. I think he's pretty good. I think he's getting better and better and better. And the more they've moved away from the tongue-in-cheek little jabs at Vince McMahon with him, I think has been good for him too, because stop reminding people he used to work there too. Occasionally they get a little too cutesy. We talked about that with the pay-per-view too, but with Brody, I think they get a little too cutesy sometimes, and haha, look, he's better than he was there. Just don't even talk about there. Talk about what he's doing right now. And so I think you're 100% right. I think the visual of these are guys that couldn't cut it in WWE. Could they? Could they not? I don't know if that's always fair. I think it's an interesting conversation, but I agree with you. Why was Miro the one? Like, it's not like all these other guys weren't already there. And where else did somebody expect him to go? Like, other than New Japan, which, again, it seems like now people can fly maybe to Japan in certain instances, since they were able to get Cobb in and Jay White and those folks. Other than New Japan, where I love MLW, but I think he can do better than MLW. I think he can make more money than MLW. I would love to see him in Ring of Honor. I don't think that's going to make sense. AEW is the place that made sense for him to go. Now, be interesting to see. I have not seen if they've done anything more last night with him in The Best Man with Kip Sabian. That's an interesting place to bring him in, but I'm willing to let it play out. Let's see what happens. I don't know. I agree with you. I think wrestling Twitter it's wrestling fans, right? And sometimes we're our own worst enemy. We just complain about things too much. And we have a whole podcast where we get to complain about things. So, hypocrite here for saying that. But I don't know. Some things aren't worth belly aching over. Enjoy the product you're getting.
I haven't given it too much thought yet, but it just hit me when you made the comment there and revisited my thoughts around Kip Sabian. I really hope that what I say doesn't actually bear itself out. But thinking about Miro as Rusev and the issue with Lashley and Lana earlier this year, and if we get something tongue-in-cheek like with Penelope Ford and Miro now and Kip Sabian on the outside, please don't. Just please don't. That's the lowest hanging fruit. But again, don't tell me what you've done. Show me what you can do. Right. And if AEW wants to make sure that that's kind of the path that they stay on, they're going to be better suited for not creating this disharmony or like the disdain from fans.
Right. No, and I 100% agree. And that will look like a cheap ripoff of WWE if they do that. I've had the same thought. Yeah, don't do it. Just don't do it. Sometimes the lowest hanging fruit is hanging so low because it's rotten. So don't do it.
Right.
Don't do it. Yeah, I agree. Now, do I think Miro and Sabian are going to become a tag team and rule the tag team roost for the next 2 years? No. Eventually, Miro is probably going to kick Sabian's head off. But it doesn't have to be because he and Penelope get together, although I have the same complete fear you do that that's where we're headed on this. Well, now that we've potentially talked about a love triangle in AEW, let's switch gears to a completely different presentation. And that's the Ring of Honor Pure Title Tournament. Started this last weekend on Ring of Honor TV. Had a really clean production look, I thought, to it. I really liked they had the names of the two wrestlers who were wrestling with a countdown or a count up clock, I guess. Not really a countdown. It showed you how long the match had been going on. There were 15-minute time limits, I believe, in the first round. And then it also had the rope breaks listed underneath, which I thought was great because then you don't have Riccaboni and Caprice having to constantly remind you, although the rope breaks really didn't play into either of these first two matches. I'm sure they will down the road in the tournament. And I think it was good that they didn't play in right away. Kind of introduce the idea, show a couple of rope breaks, work our way into this. I thought both matches. So Jay Lethal defeated Dalton Castle, and Jonathan Gresham defeated Wheeler Yuta, which I think were picks that both you and I thought were kind of no-brainers. I thought it was a really good show. I thought that you and I both, I think, made this comment. The little production packages they did before the matches, where they had kind of sit-down profiles on each of the guys, were great, and really gave you a sense of why Ring of Honor wrestling is important to them, why wrestling in general is, and why pure wrestling is important to them. Tom, what do you think of week 1 of the tournament?
Yeah, I was a real big fan of the presentation, and I was really surprised. It took about 15 minutes into that episode before we got actually in ring, which if you were watching it live, depending on when it airs in your market, that might not be the best idea. I DVR'd it, so I was able to watch it in the middle of an afternoon, and I was very intent on watching it. So that was good, but it airs where I live primarily at like 11:35 at night. So if I had made the attempt to stay up that late, and try to watch the show, I may have chose to rest my eyes in that first 15 minutes before the matches even hit the ring, right? Which again, that's me. That's not everybody, but I just think that's something that was an interesting consideration. But they had to set the table, so like I don't think that's going to happen every single week. Like they had to like literally bring us back in, reintroduce the concept, the product, and yes, like you said, it was clean, it was slick. It doesn't look like what you're getting on Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays from either of the other two brands, and that's super cool. And the presentation looks way better than the PC ever looked. Now, granted, I'm sure it's a bigger arena than the PC is or was, but the way they have the screens and the lighting, it looks cool. That it actually, even in my opinion, trends a little bit like cleaner, fresher than the Thunderdome. The Thunderdome is a little too busy, and I'm falling more and more, and I'm not going to say in love, in like with the Thunderdome, but it has its moments that it's also just a lot to digest visually. Again, Ring of Honor wants you to focus on what's happening in the ring, and I think they did a really good job launching that, and I'm excited to see. It appears that the next, this is an 8-week kind of run. The remaining 7 weeks are going to all be pure matches. So like when we chatted last week, we said, is there going to need to be a buffer in between match 1 and match 2? It appears not. It appears that, again, they're going to do those vignettes, those video packages to either reintroduce or introduce guys for the first time, and then you're going to see them go face to face. The one thing I wasn't a big fan of was the clock. I recognize the importance of stating that there's a time limit, but if you've got your announcer giving the cues at the 5-minute marks, 5 minutes have gone by, 10 minutes remain, 10 minutes have gone by, 5 minutes remain, I think that's sufficient. Or maybe just don't give me that until the last 5 minutes, because I don't know. I like match times, and I like the factor of how that plays into things. I don't know that I always need to be constantly reminded. Like when we had to beat the clock matches or beat whatever those are on WWE, like that's when that type of scenario makes sense. That is just the one small nitpick that I'll make with what Ring of Honor did that just didn't land really well with me. I'm not totally hating on it, but I could have done without it.
Sure. And I still think we may get some buffer stuff maybe come in the second round, because they're going to do all these video packages. I don't know if they'll do the packages before matches now. When we see Jay Lethal take on his next opponent, do we see another package? Maybe we'll, maybe we won't. I don't know. There could be some room for some of that. We'll see though if it plays out. Again, the cool thing is spoilers haven't gotten out really about that show almost at all. So other than that, it would be, people pure wrestling fans would be pretty happy with the action in the ring, and I think that's true. Let's take a peek here, Tom. I'm going to pull the banner out and peek here at this coming week. We have David Finlay versus Rocky Romero on the Block A side. Again, hate that term. Whatever, it is what it is. And then Delirious and Matt Sydal over on the Block B side. I think that's an interesting one, with Matt Sydal having appeared at whatever the world AEW's pay-per-view was that just ran out of my head, All Out, nearly killing himself in the process, as we talked about. Although I did read online, I don't watch Being the Elite. Do you watch Being the Elite, Tom?
I haven't watched it since early summer, I believe.
Okay. They, quick aside here, they had a little skit, I guess, for lack of a better word, in Being the Elite, where they showed before All Out, Michael Nakazawa got bumped from the Battle Royal for Matt Sydal. And so Nakazawa went out and sprayed oil on the turnbuckle. And so they're using that as the excuse as to why Sydal slipped and about brained himself. I thought it was, when I read it, I was like, okay, at least they're trying to, make a fun little storyline moment out of this. Now, it, of course, only works if we get Matt Sydal versus Michael Nakazawa some week, but I digress. So Finley, Romero, Delirious, Sydal, the first thing I will say is this lacks the star power of Jay Lethal and Jonathan Gresham and even Dalton Castle in that first episode. I think, I know we kind of looked at some picks last week. If somebody made me make picks this week, I'm going to go David Finley, since he had the run in the New Japan USA tournament over Rocky Romero. And I think Sydal is going to beat Delirious. I don't see Delirious getting out of round one on this one. What do you see this weekend, Tom?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually see Delirious beating Sydal, which is weird to say, because as I saw the Gresham match last week, I thought, wow, okay, so he really had to adapt to Yuta. And I also like to, one thing I will pull out is actually they referenced that Yuta had the lone win in the one matchup that he had with Gresham previously. Well,
Right.
not so they didn't hype that out, or the announcers didn't extrapolate on that. But the fact that you saw that graphic kind of made me as a viewer tune in a little bit more, and I think so. Like getting the win was more interesting. But yeah, I thought Gresham Delirious and like how unpredictable Delirious should be, gives Gresham another like style to adapt to. Maybe I'm totally wrong. And then I actually think Romero. I think Romero, because of the Ring of Honor history, gets the win and faces Lethal. So who knows? We obviously we have completely different picks there. So that'll be fun to revisit in a week.
Yeah, absolutely. That'll be interesting to see. There's no pool going on this, no side bets or anything going on. So we got enough of those rolling right now. So yeah, we'll see where it goes. Excited to watch that again this weekend between the G1, the Pure Title Tournament. There's some good wrestling coming up this weekend to watch. So always excited when that's the case. Lest
we forget how we started the show, football.
Absolutely. There's football as well. I again get the Packer game here instead of the Bear game. I live in Nebraska. Why? That is why I don't want to watch the Lions again. Sorry, I don't, Tom.
I don't want to watch the Lions again. So that's
right.
fair.
You're in a Lions market at least, so I understand you get them 2 weeks in a row. But yeah, we get the Bears are on CBS, but unfortunately at the same time, I believe the Broncos are, and we're a Broncos and Chiefs market usually out here. So I digress. By the way, my red shirt today, not in honor of the Nebraska Cornhuskers, but perhaps in honor of the Wisconsin Badgers with Big Ten football coming back. Maybe there'll be, there you go. Maybe there'll be a Wisconsin-Michigan game announced soon when that schedule gets released. I would think they'll play, but
and
again, on the same side, I can't remember the divisions ever, but
they're opposite divisions. And how ironic, as I last week or a week prior, said, unless we get Big Ten football, I'm definitely getting the next pay-per-view. And then sure enough, it's now shaking out that somehow, some way, Big Ten football is going to be on November 4th, the day of Full Gear. But we'll see what happens. Who knows? Typically, if you're thinking Big Ten football, it's a noon or 3:30 start. So that game should be out of the way before Full Gear.
Right.
Fingers crossed.
Be interesting to see. Yeah, exactly. We could do a whole football podcast too, but we won't do that for our non-football watching friends or listening friends. The last topic we wanted to touch on today, though, was Monday night. The eyes of Retribution were revealed. The masks. We didn't just see dark silhouetted figures anymore. We actually saw them standing there, 5 of them and maybe 6. Where we saw the eyes of those individuals. I think at least 3 of them seem pretty obvious to you and I as to who they were. I have read online who the other 2 are rumored to be at least standing there. Though, of course, until they unmask, anything is possible. You could change things. Although I think one of the females, especially if you changed her now after her eyes showing up on Monday night, there would be an awful lot of people who'd go, no, that's not who you had in there. What was your thought, Tom? The Retribution obviously had a big, they had the promo, and then they had the lights go out during the Aleister Black Kevin Owens match, which Aleister Black has now on Raw Talk accused Kevin Owens of being a part of Retribution, which would make almost no sense according to the promo they cut earlier in the night. But Black's a heel, so he doesn't have to say things that make sense either. I understand. That's fine. And then obviously the big beatdown at the end during the McIntyre and Lee match. I did read as well online this week that they are going to be exclusive to Raw moving forward, which you and I kind of touched on last week. They haven't been on SmackDown in quite a while. So they're focusing on Roman Reigns and his situation over there, and Jey Uso getting a world title shot. Holy cow. Different problem for next week to talk about Clash Champions. But thoughts on the eyes of Retribution and what you saw Monday night, Tom?
Yeah, so I think that, and it's well documented based on our previous conversations, our feelings collectively and individually, that this was fart in church worthy, to say the least, as it started. It stunk. And they're turning it around. They're Retribution, the way it's being presented, with having a logo, an image, a trademark, if you will, and then just the progression. The one thing, and I haven't read or seen anything, so I would be interested if there has been or if you saw, the way that the show finished on Monday and them all being laid out. I want to know what happened next. And I hope there's follow-up on that. Unfortunately, this is WWE, and in the attention span that I think that they believe fans have, they won't give us that. But to me, when you have the two guys that you've interfered in the match lay them out as they were brawling on the outside with the Hurt Business, like, I almost would expect on Raw next week that you really tease Retribution in the ring versus the weird combination of the Hurt Business, Keith Lee, and Drew McIntyre. Right? That's a kind of 101, what I would kind of expect. It doesn't make sense on paper, but it does make sense in terms of like how Raw finished. We're getting off kind of the whole eyes of Retribution, so I apologize because I'm kind of summarizing what all went down. But it comes back to the point of, I appreciate the progression that they've given us with this slow reveal. It's definitely a lot better than we have someone with a chainsaw chopping ropes on SmackDown and celebrating like they won the World Series. And again, I think the eyes being revealed of those people that were there give us as fans a sense of maybe thinking we know, or definitely knowing who is going to make up this group. So I'm eager to see that play out. I think when you see how Keith Lee got involved on Monday, and the history of potentially one of the people whose eyes you saw, there's history there. So that's interesting. I hope that that's not something that's lost as this continues to unroll itself, or unpack itself. Is what their motivation is, any of their past connections, and how those play into what they do going forward.
And actually, there's two tentacles that kind of reach towards Keith Lee there from Retribution, with, we'll just name it, Dominik Dijakovic appears to be the taller male figure who spoke on Monday. He was clearly that person. Just his cadence and the way he held himself and everything, as Dijakovic. Mercedes Martinez seems to be the female who spoke. The other female who was standing there very clearly, at least to you and I, was Mia Yim. Who Mia Yim and Keith Lee are a real life couple, I believe, and also were portrayed as such in NXT not all that long ago. And the way that NXT is now, with it being on USA, you can't just totally ignore what somebody's done in NXT either. When they come to Raw or SmackDown, at least I don't think you can, unless you totally repackage them, which Yim is. This would be a total repackage, certainly, to put her in Retribution. Unless once they're unmasked, she just comes out in her same head baddie in charge gear, which totally could happen too. I agree with you. This thing started off really hokey, cheesy, terrible. You and I both felt the same way. We talked about how my brother hated it so much. It has turned the corner and gotten better. I don't like, for instance, at the end of Raw, when there were 20 of them, of Retribution members, you're not going to unmask 20 people. We all know that. It's going to be kind of the 5, or it seemed like a 6th person stepped into that shot. You and I talked about this a little bit before we started recording. A 6th person stepped into that shot, and then some more people showed up. But that 6th person stepped in on their own. So is there 6 main people? They haven't really defined how many there are with Retribution. Sometimes there are 5, 6. Other times there are 20, 30. So, this gets into Dark Order minion territory. I know I've used that analogy before. So that's the part that I'm like, meh. If it's going to be a faction and a group, then tell me how many people are in it. Or if you add to it along the way, that's fine. Don't go NWO style and add everybody to it, in the end. But it'll be interesting to see. And my fear too is, don't do what they do with so many factions, which is you'll have one guy, let's say, I'm just going to use Dijakovic as an example. You have Dijakovic as the leader, and he wins most of his matches, but the other 2 guys, whether they remain as the 2 that were said to be under those masks on Monday night or somebody else, they're the guys who lose every match. Or even worse, I mentioned this before we started recording, I think, if you do add a Kevin Owens or a Miz, or which has also been hinted at, although if they're going to stay on Raw, maybe the Miz thing just kind of gets dropped and ended. Or you even had suggested Drew McIntyre at one point, which I think would have been very interesting back at SummerSlam. Seems like maybe not the way they're going to go now, because why would they beat up their leader, right? Although, was it a red herring? Maybe they didn't. I don't know.
I felt the same way about Keith Lee on Monday. Now I don't know. Right? I don't feel incredibly strongly with that, but it keeps me guessing, and maybe I'm way off the mark. But I go, gosh, yeah, it's the what comes next, So right. I'm actually more interested in what comes next now for Retribution than I was at any time previous. The last couple of weeks have given me that.
Yep, and I was going to say and that's a good thing. That's a good thing that they've got us wondering about that. So they've got to keep them strong, though. I go back to the Nexus. They came in, the Nexus just wrecked stuff. It was one of the more memorable angles in Raw history, and they never really followed up on that well. Hopefully, Retribution doesn't become that, because I think of the people who they have right now that seem to be a part of that, Dijakovic and Mercedes and Mia Yim, and perhaps the other 2 names that were rumored were Dio Madden, who used to be on the Raw broadcast team for a short while. He's a big dude as well. And then Shane Thorne used to be part of the Mighty Don't Kneel. TMDK, yeah. Or what were they in NXT? TM61. Yeah, TM61. Now those guys could be changed. Heck, Dijakovic, Yim, or Mercedes could be changed, although Mercedes' eyes were very reminiscent. So that would be the one that I would say would be tough to change now. But keep them strong, because all of those people, I haven't seen Madden in the ring, other than he was in Raw Underground a couple of weeks back, real briefly. So I haven't really seen him work a lot in the ring. I don't know anything about him. But the other guys are all good. Other guys and gals are all good in the ring. So keep them strong if you're going to do that. It'll be interesting to see. I think we're getting closer to the unmasking. I think the fact that they did show their eyes was telling in that respect. You made the point too before we recorded, during the beatdown at the end of Raw. There was one of the other minions who darn near seemed to lose his mask. I mean, he was almost full face shown. I don't think it was any of the guys I just mentioned. Probably was random indie, or not indie, but random performance center trainee, number 423. But yeah, darn near had as you called it, a mask malfunction. So speaking of which, so I need to go totally off topic for one moment. That just reminded me of something I wanted to say. I need to go back to AEW for a second. Well, let's wrap up Retribution, and then I'll touch on my AEW thing.
And I think we're good on Retribution, unless you have anything else to say. I actually want to touch on one more thing on Raw. I know we don't have a banner for this if you're watching on YouTube. Did you have anything else on Retribution?
No, I think I'm good on Retribution.
Okay. My other thing, and again, we could have ended on a real high note, and we might still, but I'm going to take us away from that. I'm going to take us away from that because I want to revisit what in the world are we experiencing with Raw Underground? What? Like, just give me something to care about. I can't make heads or tails of Raw Underground week in and week out. And it appears we're actually building to something now, but I don't care. I don't care. Like, oh, help me. Is it any better for you? Like,
no, it's not. Dolph Ziggler can't win a match on Raw, basically. Now he's on the announce team, where was Samoa Joe? That was interesting. We had both Samoa Joe and Tom Phillips not there on Monday night. If they said where they were, I missed it, which is totally possible. I
think they might have said like a scheduled absence or something. Maybe not absence, but a scheduled time off or something, which is weird. Like, you don't have, that's not a term that they've used in the past.
Right.
So
honestly, it made me think COVID. It just did. And they're not going to say that. They can't, or they shouldn't. Funny thing about HIPAA actually protects you from healthcare facilities for sharing your info. Somebody else sharing it isn't really a HIPAA violation. It's just a moral violation. So maybe it was something like that. So you got Dolph Ziggler, though, who looks like a world beater in Raw Underground, but they don't transfer that into anything. Eric gets beat, which, what are you doing there? And I did like that at least Eric is not going to be totally forgotten on Raw while Ivar is out. Although he got tapped, but whatever. He tapped at Bobby Lashley. I can live with that. But on the Raw Underground thing, then you have Braun Strowman come in and just tear everybody up. And now you're building to next week. Apparently, now they've announced Raw Underground matches that haven't happened the next week after they've announced them before. But you're going to Braun Strowman, Dabba-Kato. If you have Braun Strowman knock out Dabba-Kato in like 10 seconds, you are stupid. The only thing they've done in Raw Underground that's made me even slightly interested is Dabba-Kato. He's come off, as a badass. I like that he stepped up to Braun Strowman. He's got to knock out Braun Strowman, or Braun Strowman has to feel his power and then go, all right, I'm out of here. Screw this. This isn't worth my time. He's a heel. He can do that. This isn't fair, whatever. They got to be real careful what they do with that. But I agree with you. Outside of that, there was some talk of adding a Raw Underground title at one point. Don't add one more belt. There are 4,000 belts in WWE right now. Like, everybody and their sister has a title.
Well, and if you do give me a title, the Underground title, I need to know what rules define the title. Like Shane McMahon, you should be cool. You should be cool. You should be hip. You try. You clearly are pretty successful in other areas, but you're not. It doesn't make sense here. When you say anything goes in Raw Underground, and people just start throwing fists, and then they fall to the outside of the ring. Oh, we got to get out of here. No, I don't want to get out of here. That's unsatisfying. Like, why do I care?
So totally agreed. And they also don't define well. And this comes maybe from my scoring of a fantasy wrestling league, but they don't define well what's a match. Like, yeah. Sometimes guys just get in the ring and they beat it, and then they run away, and there's no bell. Sometimes there's a bell. Maybe there's a tap out, maybe there's a knockout. We haven't really seen many knockouts since early on, although Dolph had the elbow thing, dropping elbows on a guy this week. Yeah, I agree. Well, they have been doing this now for 5 or 6 weeks.
I think so.
And as of yet, well, they started that the same week Retribution debuted, I think.
Okay, I wanted to say it felt close to me, which is why when we were talking about Retribution, right? So when we were talking about Retribution, how it's turned the corner, at least for now, in what we would, I think, agree is a positive direction. Raw Underground, I feel like they're doggy paddling, trying to keep their head above water.
And I don't think they're succeeding in it right now.
No, they're on a life raft, please.
Right. And at least it's only in 1 hour. At least they're not doing, Raw Underground segments all 3 hours.
Right. And that life raft is not Braun Strowman. I'm sorry.
No. Clearly, he was the one, de-pushed out of the situation with Roman Reigns, The Fiend, and himself. He got beat by both The Fiend and Roman Reigns within the course of a week. So, and now he's at Raw Underground fighting a virtual unknown, to be fair. And that's my only thing. He's a virtual unknown who could be something. So don't just destroy him to Braun Strowman. Please don't do that.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm sure that'll be fun to talk about next week, one way or the other.
Right. Exactly. The last thing, I gotta say this. So mask malfunction made me think of this. JR. A week ago, I think, or it might have even been at All Out, Anna Jay got involved in one of the Dark Order's matches because she's obviously a member of the Dark Order now. And so Brody or Grayson or Uno or somebody picked her up and to remove her from the situation. And JR said, "Did Anna Jay just have a wardrobe malfunction, or was that just wishful thinking on my part?" And he's done this a number of times in AEW where he's just making these, excuse me for saying it, a horny old man comments about the women in AEW. One of the things that AEW is trying to present, I think, in their women's division, and WWE has also been trying to present in their women's division over the last number of years, is that the women are athletes. Yes, they're beautiful women, but they are beautiful women who are incredible athletes. And that has been the focus of women's wrestling versus, to be fair to JR, the Attitude Era, which JR was a huge part of, which was all about TNA and puppies and Jerry Lawler yelling all his, horny old man things. Somebody has got to stop JR from doing this. In this day and age of the Me Too movement and people being much more aware about what we say, and I think that's a good thing. Anna Jay is a 21, 22-year-old young lady. She's a beautiful lady. She is, sure. I don't need a 60, 70, whatever he is, year old man, or any man for that matter, but especially an older man like this, saying he's hoping that she'll have a wardrobe malfunction. Just stop, JR.
Well,
stop.
And you're going to alienate your fans,
right?
If you go down that path. Subsequently, you are promoting as well an inclusive group to try to put a focus on or give attention to female wrestling fans. You can't do both. I mean, they are doing both, obviously, but you're spiting that effort of trying to be inclusive to women as fans when you make comments like this.
Right.
Whether they catch them,
and
whether
it's not
they
the first time.
Right.
And it's not the first time. He also, his Twitter sometimes comes off a little creepy. Now, yes, okay, women post a bikini picture, whatever. You don't have to comment, and you don't have to make a creepy comment, even if you do comment. So, I don't know. It bugged me when I heard it, and I've been meaning to say something, and I think I meant to say something last week, and it just never kind of came up. And when we talked about the mask malfunction with the Retribution, the word malfunction clicked with me. It's not a good look. Tony Khan needs to be in JR's ear and let him know that, look, I think Khan sometimes, I like a lot of what he's doing in running AEW, but I almost feel like he fanboys a little bit sometimes. And JR is great. JR is the greatest announcer of all time, so I'm going to let JR do his thing. Most of the time, I think that's okay. JR missing a move or calling somebody the wrong name or whatever. Look, every announcer does that. Sports announcers do that. I can't tell you the number of times that I've watched a football game and they tell me the wrong guy scored the touchdown until he turns around, you see his number, and you go, oh, never mind. That was actually this wide receiver, not that guy. It happens.
Yeah, if I get Dick Stockton on another call this year, I know you didn't watch much of the Lions game, and be thankful that you didn't. And again, Dick Stockton's much older than JR. This isn't pick on announcer segment, but I am. I was texting my buddy who we couldn't get together because they have a son in protective quarantine because there was a COVID outbreak at his school since we returned in person, and we wanted to watch the game together, and it didn't come to be. And I go, if Dick Stockton mispronounces or misnames one more player, I'm going to mute my TV. And he goes, you can't be mad. He goes, the dude's 90. I go, no, I can't be mad. Like Fox is putting him on the air, and AEW is putting JR on the air. So again,
Right.
like circling back around to the point being made, you gotta be willing to be consistent, right? So don't suspend talents for their discretions of the past, and then allow JR to make comments like that in modern times.
Right. And people can say, oh, Guevara's comment was abhorrent. I'm not even going to repeat it because it was terrible. And I understand it was a young guy, being stupid. I was young. I don't think I ever said that phrase about any female. Have I said things in the past that I would not be proud of? Absolutely. I will own that 100%. Never said that. Pretty sure of that. But be better. Like, we're all trying to be better. It's not that hard to not, if you want to say Anna Jay is a beautiful woman, okay, I can live with that. But don't say that you as a 70 whatever year old man are hoping she has a wardrobe malfunction. That's just creepy. And frankly, if they had a young hip announcer, which they don't in AEW right now, Excalibur's the youngest, and he's probably our age, if not older, a little older. Actually, he would be a little older because he was wrestling when I was younger than that. If he said it, I would take exception to it as well. Or if somebody young and hip said it too. It's not because of JR's age. Stop it. If you're bad at calling wrestling, that's one thing, but you don't have to be creepy too. So, and I'm not saying he's bad at calling wrestling. Nobody hashtag JR on this and tell him I said that. Like he gives a crap. But just my thought. Happier ways to finish this out, because that was a bummer of a last topic. Looking ahead, let's look ahead a little bit.
Downward hard and fast.
Yes, we did. So let's try to pull the nose on this thing a little bit.
Well, and on that note, speaking of things that things you've said in the past that you weren't really proud of, it's a good segue to talk about next week. Pick'ems.
Okay, Tom Bobo. Yes, I am now proud of my pick'ems record. Hopefully that can start shifting when I pick Jey Uso to win the Universal title next week. No, I'm going to tell you right now. As Paul Heyman would say, that's a spoiler. I'm not doing that. I will talk about that next week. I just had a thought about where I think that might lead, and it'd be great for next week's preview. Next week, we are going to preview Clash of Champions. As of right now, I think there's like 4 matches announced. I expect more throughout the week since every title will be defended. There should be 426 matches on that card. But also, we may be able to touch on next week. NXT UK returns today, this afternoon, actually on WWE Network, which maybe I'll get a chance to watch before my trivia night tonight that I lead. So that'll be interesting. Fun fact on the trivia night, Tom, I have a pro wrestling topic this week that was picked by one of my teams. So 11 questions on pro wrestling. I think you would do very, very well at the 11 questions. For the most part, the teams that I've had this week have not done very, very well on them. But I tried to keep it real even. But maybe we'll introduce a trivia segment next week too, and I'll give Tom random trivia questions about wrestling. It'll be good. Tom, you keep beating me at pick'ems. We're gonna find something I can beat you at. So we will preview Clash of Champions next week. I'm sure we'll touch on the G1 and Ring of Honor Pure title as well. Like I said, maybe touch on the UK returning. They've got a tournament as well starting on the show with the Heritage Cup starting there too. So tournaments galore. Love tournaments. So I can tell you right now, I had fallen off watching the UK show quite a while before they went on hiatus. They did the right thing as far as I'm concerned here. Coming back, they put a tournament in, which gives you a reason to want to tune in. And it's worked for me. I'm looking forward to tuning in and catching that and watching that tournament. So smart for them to give some purpose to their return right away as well. So we've got that coming. There's a takeover coming in a couple of weeks. Neither of us have seen NXT this week, so I assume the build to that begins in earnest because they've only got about 2 weeks to get that done, 2 to 3 shows here to get that done. Wouldn't have killed them to announce it a week or two before. Even though, yes, they were working on the whole getting a new champion, you could still say there's a takeover coming. We know the champion will probably defend a takeover. We'll figure that out along the way. But anyways, they did what they did. So lots of things to look forward to as we keep moving forward. Guys, if you get a chance on whatever podcast platform you're on, we're on Spotify, we're on Google, we're on Apple, we're on a bunch of other ones that I've never heard of, which is great. We're also on YouTube. This does stream live as we record it on YouTube, but we never exactly know when that is, so we don't really promote it. But we land on YouTube as well. Like us, subscribe, rate, review, all of that fun stuff. It helps us in the algorithms. Share us with your friends. If you got friends who are wrestling fans, tell them about Two Spot Monkeys. Just let them know that we're here and we're having fun doing this. So, Tom, anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, I'm good. This was fun. I can't wait for next week. Lots of wrestling to digest between now and then.
I'm going to need a couple more days between now and then.
the 10-day week, not the 7-day week, the 10-day week.
Right. Amen to that. But enjoy the wrestling that you do consume this week, whatever that is, folks. And we'll be back again next week with more Two Spot Monkeys. Have a great week, everyone.